Right, well, welcome to, I think we're Restart Sailing Show 38, John. I think we've lost a bit of count, but heading towards number 40. I'm Simon Lovesey and joined by John Emmett, who's on his phone today, I think.
Yeah, bit of an IT issue, but nothing's going to stop us. Although it will mean that the YouTube version of this show will be posted in due course.
Yeah, but as I say, the show must go on. So 3 stages, amazing. You know, we're coming up, what, 2 years, and it's still still very valid, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Unfortunately, my computer completely decided to die, so I'm in the process of taking everything off the hard drive and doing a complete system restore. So the slides we've got up now showing the COVID numbers are actually the slides from the previous show, but probably not much has changed.
Yes, I think the dates obviously need to move along, but I think the curve is still the same, isn't it?
Is it possible to move on to those next slides?
Yes, we've now got the active cases up.
Okay, so
See an
just so you
uptake.
know, what I see on my screen is obviously not what you're showing. So that's going to make it quite difficult. So,
Yeah, yeah.
so please bear with me, because I also have no idea where I am positioned in terms of my little box. If I move out of that, I
Yeah,
do
no,
apologise.
they're looking good.
Uh,
But I think the shape of the curve is still similar, isn't it?
Yeah, so there's two things really. The first one is in terms of the numbers between now and the October show, which I think off the top of my head will be October 7th. I'd expect a very large increase in the number of cases, and that's associated with the schools going back. But I would imagine very few additional negative outcomes, so hospitalizations and deaths. But I would expect the actual numbers to go up, the number of new cases. That's a really important thing to think about. That's the first thing. And the second thing, I think people are just starting to realise now that we're not going to ever reaching herd immunity by the true natural way that it's meant to be. So herd immunity is when a large percentage of people become immune, but we've actually found that you don't become immune by having it. So if you catch COVID, you can catch it again, and you don't become completely immune by having 2 jabs. So that means in some form, COVID is going to be here to stay. Although in due course, I guess it will just be part of the seasonal flu virus, and probably they'll have a sort of COVID element to the flu jab for the weaker, or maybe I should say more vulnerable members of society. So I think obviously, when it started in 2019, hence the fact COVID-19, people didn't know that. But that looks like it's the way we're heading. And when we get our guest on, that's somebody else who's recently
Yeah.
had COVID. So it
And I
touches
think as we're
every.
seeing with plans for the schools, we're just learning to live with it. It was quite encouraging to hear on the radio, their plans. It's more, they don't close the whole school down now. It's just, those people have got to isolate, and they
It's
just
just
keep.
minimizing negative outcomes. I think that's the key.
Yeah. So obviously the Facebook still sort of jumps up into life, and I think actually now we're getting more into our resetting of sailing. I think good
Yeah,
to
and
see lots
I
of.
would encourage people, if people got new events or changing events, the events sometimes didn't get cancelled but got postponed, put it all up there. I would absolutely love to hear from you. And I see, for example, the cadet class did a really nice little video about their nationals, and do put that up there, because that's all part of the great reset. And I've come back to do a lot of club racing now this second half of the year, and I've absolutely loved it. And it just reinforces to me what an important part of the scene the club sailing is. And actually, I realised for me, it's my only training. That's my only
Yeah,
opportunity to practice
absolutely.
stuff and going around marks. So the club and open events, I think. Well, I like to think we're almost back to where we were.
Yeah, well, we've seen a bumper summer. I think the national championships in the main have been
August, yes.
record numbers, and yeah, just back from the Tiger Trophy in Rutland, the last of the winter series, believe it or not. So I think we've seen a consultation like the youth nationals events that were due to happen earlier. have moved into the summer, haven't they? And then combined
Yeah,
with the
and
tradition.
I think August in a lot of ways is probably the safest month, because the other thing I expect to happen over the winter is probably to have a few more winter diseases, coughs, colds, flus and things, which people wouldn't have got the last winter because we were all kept separate from each other. So yeah, I think August is very good for sort of sea breezes and water temperature and available daylight hours. I actually know some people are doing sort of 2 or 3 national back to back to squeeze it all in.
Yeah, making the most of it. But still seeing a few events cancelled. Interesting, I think, so that the Bala Regatta was cancelled due to COVID, and also I think Open Meetings of Stone I saw this weekend. So
and internationally, the Princess Sophia, which was originally postponed, has now been cancelled, and they will be back more or less on the normal dates next year. And I think, as much as anything, that's because there were so many events around that time. You have reduced entries, but for anybody who's been to Palma, it's a wonderful place, and a year without Palma is always a little bit sad.
But I guess we're now just into that sort of dynamic sort of events coming and going a bit. So that's perhaps just a fact of life, isn't it?
Yeah, I think people will maybe make plans, book flights, book accommodation a bit later than they used to, and that's the way it will be. But yeah, I think it's just, for me, showing the beginning stages, the simple racing and the club racing and the local opens, how important they are. And I'm actually going to try and do a little bit of media for all the events I attend, just to show, how good fun they are, and to try and get the numbers up, whatever club or whatever class you say that.
Yeah. So I think welcome to Nigel, isn't it?
Hi, Nigel. I can actually see you. I just can't see your slides. So
well, we got a nice picture of Nigel sailing his aero there. So
I use my imagination.
Yes.
Okay. Funny enough, I actually can't see any slides either, so I don't know whether.
Okay,
situation.
No sure what's gone wrong there, but I'll talk you through them. So Nigel, you're the Commodore of Burghfield Sailing Club, right?
Yeah, I mean, I took over in sort of October 19. So the club was doing well. It was the previous Commodore had sort of served their tenure. It was time for a change at the club. And I think when I took on that responsibility, I don't think any of us could envisage what was going to happen next. So it was we knew we had some work to do at the club. Like any club, there's always things that need to be done. There's, we introduced a new management system that needed to be bedded in, needed a bit of rework on it. So there was things that we absolutely knew we had to do, and I've got a great team behind me. The one thing we weren't prepared for was what was going to happen in the spring. My word,
on anyone's radar when you signed up for your term of office. Can I just check, Nigel? Is the slide you currently see the very first slide?
I can't see any slides at all.
We're showing the one at the clubhouse. So I actually, as you know, Nigel came along. I think it was the Aero Youths, wasn't it? When was that? Gosh,
it was. So that was probably our last major event, which was in the sort of November sort of 19. And literally,
so we were going into lockdown, or coming out, or going in.
Going in, because the Sunday after that was the last day for club racing, and literally after that was it. It was we were shut down again. So
yeah. So
that must be November 20, was that?
Yeah,
no,
that's right. But you've made some impressive changes to the club, which is showing the looking at the balcony from the water side and the tents and.
Yeah, well, I think there's a couple of things that sort of happened, really. I think that when we first hit the COVID sort of situation initially in April, it was quite clear that, we're going into the unknown. I suppose a lot of us are in business. We sort of looked at it, how it's affecting our businesses. And, the club is no different. You have to look at the club and think, oh, my word, furlough was there. We need to take advantage of it. You needed to cut costs because you don't know what the membership is going to do. And, it wasn't a great surprise that we had a lot of people who dropped off the club. Not the regular sort of sailors, but what you tend to find is the people on the fringes who joined the club didn't really sail, didn't really have a boat. I always find that a bit odd, really. People joining a sailing club without a boat, other than for social reasons, of course, for the bar. But some of those people just disappeared, and so of course we're sitting thinking, okay, we've got a few challenges here. So okay, the first thing we sort of looked at was just basically, as any club would, trying to sort of firm up the cost base. But the one thing that COVID did, of course, is that it has its tragic side, of course, and we can't forget that. But on the positive side, it really has brought people together. So we actually found ourselves with people wanting to join the club. So as many people left, we have coming to join because they wanted to get back into sailing again. They were looking for some sort of social hub, and the number of volunteers we had and the number of activities we had with working parties was just phenomenal. So even working with restrictions. Sorry,
2020 was actually a bumper year for you in terms of membership.
It was. I mean, it was a phenomenal year in terms of membership growth. We did a lot of things to sort of try and help it. I mean, Simon sort of alluded to about the balcony there. I mean, one of the things you sort of learn is that the indoor space was going to be difficult. So we all accepted that we're going to be challenged. So how do we make it a pleasant environment for the membership? Well, let's increase the outdoor space and make it usable. And literally, we were looking at various schemes like, I suppose, not greenhouses, sort of conservatory type structures. And one of our members happens to be somebody who does sort of these fantastic marquee type tents. And he basically said, look, I tell you what, we can do something fabulous here. We claim it's based on Monaco Yacht Club. It's not true, but we still claim it is because it sounds good. And of course, from our perspective, because we put blue dye in the lake as well, so you've got the lovely blue of the ocean. You've got the shaly beach just below the balcony.
So what's the blue dye? I've definitely missed something here.
Okay. Well, the blue dye is there to obviously prevent weed growth in the lake, which is particularly important because where you've got lakes like ours, which do have shallower areas, you need some form of weed management system. So we actually put a dye into the lake, but it does give it this lovely blue tinge. And for a bit of fun,
does it give sailors' legs a lovely blue tinge as well?
No, not at all. Not at all.
Okay.
You wouldn't notice it. Or the boats either. It doesn't stick, which is rather nice. But the one thing about it all is that it creates this lovely atmosphere, and because of all the whole staycation, we decided to rename the club Burghfield, which is where that all came in. So we gave it a tropical feel. And of course, if anybody's ever been to Burghfield, you'll know it's always glorious sunshine with lovely breezes. Mostly.
But it's been impressive, Nigel, how you've been repurposing the club, and it's a bit like we've seen the hospitality industry have sort of driven outside, and I think that'll be a trend that continues.
Yeah, well, it's important because other clubs have done other things. They've done. I mean, whenever we always go to events or anywhere else, we're all of the team. We're all looking, learning, observing to see what other people are doing, and thinking, okay, well, what can we do? What can we do with this? We don't have the big cash reserves that some of these bigger clubs have got, so we have to be a little bit more prudent in what we do. But even with the clubhouse, we covered the underneath as well to create outdoor changing space. So it was not perfect, but at least you got somewhere where if the weather's inclement and you don't want to get changed by your car, you're not going to get wet. Maybe a bit cold, but you're not going to get wet, which is nice. If only we could have the hot showers. That's the only thing.
I just got used to getting changed by the side of the car, and saves a lot of time and encourages you to be quick, and you get on the water quicker. And certainly not a bad thing. Maybe I would have think differently in December time, but over the summer, not at all.
Yeah. No, I think a lot of our members still get changed by cars. I mean, I still as well. It's almost like habitual now that you're so used to doing it. That's what you do. I mean, the only thing I would like to do is have this sort of the hot showers that Hailing have got. That would be really nice. the hot outdoor showers. That'd be quite something.
Yeah. And you've also been pushing the technology forward. I mean, we've been involved with a project really on the trackers, and I think it's been good to see the technology sort of filtering down and you making use of it. You've been running it on some of your pursuit races, I think, haven't you?
Yeah, well, basically, I suppose it came out of sort of circumstance and various sort of discussions with yourself, Simon. But I mean, we have the trackers for the Aero Youth Nationals. And because of the whole COVID situation, we were hosting an event in December, which didn't happen. So we got all these trackers sitting at the club. And I think between sort of Ben and Simon and various other discussions, it was a case of, well, why don't we use them at the club? And the big format of racing, of course, during the whole COVID has been pursuit. Because, of course, it was the whole social distancing on shore.
Everyone.
Sorry?
It just separates everyone, doesn't it?
It does. It does.
Natural self-distancing, yeah.
Yeah, and that proved to be incredibly popular. The big challenge with the pursuit race, of course, is finishing the damn thing. Because traditionally what you would have is a committee boat and a safety boat going down the line and recording the positions. And no matter how good they were and how fast they were, it was always going to be wrong somewhere. So the trackers actually proved to be a fantastic asset because all of a sudden you can take a snapshot of the water bang on 100 minutes. I mean, we don't do any Mickey Mouse pursuits. It's 100 minutes on a Sunday morning, a proper race. And the good thing about it is you can take the snapshot. Okay, there may be the odd glitch. There may be a tracker that wasn't charged. But the good thing about a pursuit race, of course, is that somebody always knows who they're in front of and behind. So you can deal with the exceptions. It's really, really good. So all of a sudden, we have a situation where we don't need a committee boat going down the line. We don't need a safety boat. You could do a club line start, which also helped with the social distancing. You just set the timer up on shore, which is great. All you need is an ODM dropped on the water. The race starts, the race finishes, the results are there. Input straight into the management system, and literally the same day the results are there and published. Any queries, you can deal with them because you're only going to get a few. So it's worked really, really well for the pursuit races.
And I think the technology really, we need to be pushing it forward, don't we? Because certainly a lot of clubs are finding it difficult to run races often with shortage of volunteers and things like that. And I think perhaps Burghfield's experienced that as well in terms of not always possible to get a race team together, is it?
Well, duties is always the hardest thing of everybody is that, you're trying to run so many, and this year in particular, we've run so many events, so many open meetings planned. You sort of quickly look at it and think, well, actually, have we got enough resource to run this? So the one thing about using the trackers, of course, is that because the results look after themselves, if you do a committee boat start, you only need two people. You need somebody, the race officer, who sets the course and manages the day, and you need an assistant who basically is there to drop the anchor, in simple terms. They do a bit more than that, of course, but rather having these teams of people on these boats, you just don't need that. So we've managed to get the numbers down to the lowest possible denominator. And a lot of that is to take the pressure off of duties. And this year particularly, it's proving to be a little bit more of a challenge, I have to say.
Well, and I think it's important because actually if you look at the events recently cancelled, it was actually due to a COVID incident, perhaps in the race management team, and suddenly 2 or 3 people are isolating, and that's your team gone, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, we started off in 2020 with the club line start, which we've never really done before. That proved to be really popular. The hardest job we've had this year is actually telling people, get in the committee boat, get back out on the water again, do a proper line start. Because it became so easy for people that actually, we had to sort of change the cycle and say, no, come on, we need to get back out there. We need to start doing proper starts again.
Well, that's the practice you need for championships, isn't it? That proper line start off a committee boat, because it's very different crossing in front of a boat as opposed to crossing in front of a buoy. Yeah. And I think tracking is definitely part for the future. A lot of people who came back from the Olympic Games would have had around 2 weeks in quarantine, 21 days. For the Chinese. So I know a lot of people spent a lot of time going back looking at every single race on the tracker, and that's I think that's a really useful tool.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because don't forget, with any club demographic, you've got a mix. So you've got your more senior members, and at the bottom you've got your youngest and your youths. And what's been quite interesting, I suppose, is the technology. I mean, everything's online now. You sign in online, results online, trackers online, and a lot of the sort of less IT literate people. It's amazing how they have positively embraced the technology. They don't always like it. Even using the iPad, they don't always like it, and and I do get grief from people from time to time. But even people I wouldn't have expected. I heard that somebody actually got themselves a bigger TV screen so they can watch themselves on the live tracker data when they got home. I don't know how true that was.
but it has sort of helped us move on some of these sort of developments, really, and I think that can only be a positive. So looking at the numbers, I don't know if you can see the graph, but you obviously be familiar with the graph, Nigel. Perhaps talk us through how it's changed over the year.
Well, it was quite interesting for us because one of the things we're looking at is boats on the water and how popular the formats of the racing are. And I think in 2020, you can see from the graph there was a massive spike in terms of morning races, both in July and August. And I think, we had boats on the water, unprecedented numbers. You're talking sort of, an average, and that's an average, so an average of 42 boats or something on the water in August every weekend. This year, it has dropped back a bit, back to sort of what I would sort of say sort of normal levels, if you like. That was quite expected because I think if you look at what's happened in August, as John was saying, there's loads of events going on. Everybody's taking every opportunity to go away if they can. So we did expect that this August was going to be a challenge, and we've seen it both with water and with duties as well with numbers. But now we've done the pursuit format. As we go into the autumn now, we're switching back to a different format. So we like to keep things lively. So rather than just sort of doing the same old, we're now moving back into handicap morning, handicap afternoon. And to keep it even more exciting, we've got sort of various events. So we've got a cup race coming up in a few weeks where the morning races are merely the qualifier. Right. So that, just to add a little bit of a dynamic to it, the morning race determines whether you're in gold or silver. And only the winner of gold.
Sailing Grand Prix or something.
It is. I mean, we've done. We did a fleet trophy race where we had 6 races. 3 races back to back in the morning, and there we actually had class starts for any fleet that could get 5 or more boats together. We thought, okay, this is what you want. We're going to do it, and it worked really. It was a great. I mean, I was race officer. I learned a lot that day, I have to say. And there's a few things I wouldn't do the same again, but that's part of the learning experience. But it's great.
But you've got to try these things, and it's great that you are innovating and just sort of finding out what works, what doesn't, and then that. We've got to stick our neck out a bit, haven't we, and just try and push things forward. Yeah.
Well, I think it's too easy to sort of stick with what you know, and I mean, clearly you can't keep everybody happy all of the time. But we do listen to what people are saying, and we do try and mix the formulas around a little bit, and we're just trying to make it interesting. And we even give the series silly names sometimes. And this summer series was the Summer Tropic series, Summer Tropic Loving series, I hasten to add. Autumn's now the Falling Leaves, and the pursuit race at Christmas is the Christmas Cracker. Why not?
Yeah. And I think people are noticing. We were talking about it at the Tiger Dinner. Non-Burghfield members are actually sort of noticing some of the stuff that you're doing there. So it's the message is getting out. It's the club that's innovating, really.
Well, but I think what we're doing is, we are trying to be creative with it. We are sort of getting feedback from our members. But I think the key thing is that. Those of us who go to other clubs, we're looking at ideas and thinking, well, why don't we do that? Or why don't we try that? So I think it's just keeping your eyes open all the time and just saying, okay, well, what can we do to make that difference? Keep people engaged.
Yeah. So you've had a few challenges. Got the food picture. Was that one of the challenges? I don't know.
No, well, the food picture. Well, no, I think this is another example where, you have to innovate. And we've come up with a rather, well, once again, I don't know whether this is sort of planned or it just happened, okay? But we had a caterer. He was dire. The staple dish on a Sunday was baked beans, sausage and chips. Chips were dreadful. Bacon rolls with microwave. We knew we had to take. COVID enabled us to have a clean break. And then you're left in a situation as a club that, in order to keep people on site, you've got to have a proposition there. We can't do like some of the clubs have full-time caterers. We can't afford to do that. So we went out to the membership. They came back with a few ideas. One of the most innovative things was that there was a firm called the Gourmet Queens. They were looking for a kitchen. They wanted to expand their operations. They needed a kitchen. We needed a caterer.
Oh, right.
So, of course, the two things, you look at it and think, oh, my work, this is fantastic. So they use our kitchen most days of the week. And whilst they're there, they'll serve members with tea, coffees, and snacks.
Okay. So they doing sort of home deliveries from your kitchen, is that what you mean?
Yeah, they have various different sort of things they do, but they're using our kitchen to sort of for their other business enterprises. They're very innovative in terms of what they do. They've also got other kitchens elsewhere, but it was one of those things where it's sort of a win-win. We need caterers, they need a kitchen. Well, okay. Let's see how it works.
Yeah.
And so far, it's been brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And that's an example of the sort of food they serve, which was lovely.
Yeah. I mean, sailing clubs are often underutilised at certain times of the week, aren't they? And I think the more we can use the resource, the better, even if it's not for sailing.
Well, it depends on your type of club as well, because if you look at like the Lymington situation, you're a club in the middle of a town where a lot of people are very close and very local.
Yeah.
And, on a daily basis, they will visit the club. Burghfield is, whilst it's just outside Reading, it's still remote. Most of the people will travel more than sort of 10 minutes to get there, some half an hour, some even longer. So it's a quite a bit different challenge, really, in terms of club. But it was a very innovative idea. And I have to say hats off to my rear Commodore clubhouse, Mark. Brilliant thinking.
Yeah, good. So finally, Burghfest, the innovations.
well, that was something else that we sort of, as a committee, we wanted to give something back to the membership. We wanted to have some sort of party, some sort of celebration, and initially we looked at like a week-long regatta type thing. That became sort of quite clear that wasn't going to work. So then we looked at a long weekend. And then sort of Ben sort of also suggested, my son said, look, Dad, why don't we sort of make this into a bit of a festival so we can have great club championship racing during the day and then have a party every night. So we had over the weekend 7 bands. We had Stunning Tents provided the marquee for us. We had a cider company, Just Press Cider, who provided a cider van. I have to say, I didn't realise that the one I liked the most was the strongest.
I can relate to that.
Queens, and Gourmet Queens provided the catering. I mean, we even had, because we have now paddleboard members as well at the club, we had a paddleboard championship. Now, that was probably, and of course everybody could watch from the balcony, and that was probably one of the most hilarious races you've ever seen. It was just amazing.
Great. And it's all about really making full use of your facilities. So Reading Festival, here we come, isn't it, I think?
It's about having fun. I mean, the problem is that, I think a lot of clubs, people turn up, they go out racing, they come in, it's about trying to have a bit of fun as well. So we'll often have some loud music playing in the morning. It's not everybody's cup of tea, bit of Guns N' Roses, but there we go. Yeah. But we'll do it just for a bit of fun. I mean, we even had a 400 open meeting, and Nick Craig managed to win. And just because it was funny, we played "We Are the Champions" as he sailed in. And and sometimes you've just got to have a bit of fun and just say, look, this is what we're here for. If we're not enjoying being at the club, enjoying racing and having fun at the club, then it's not the right place to be. And the good thing is that I think everybody wants to have fun.
And it's the overall package, isn't it? I think it's the sort of it's the lifestyle or whatever. So,
you're obviously doing great things, and thank you so much for your time and all your input.
Well, it's not just me, John. I mean, I have to thank loads of people because, I'm the only one. I'm the guy who sort of takes the flak. But, I think like any club, you've got to have a good team of people behind you. From the person that deals with the weed, from the person that there's lots of mundane stuff that goes on, and I think my personal thanks go to everybody at the club who helps out, volunteers, and does stuff.
Right. Okay. So thanks. Great to see. So I think the last of the Restart Sailing chats was with Ben Flower, wasn't it, John?
Yes. And now we're going to be going to monthly shows. So if we look at the next show, I can't actually confirm the guest at the moment because we're still waiting to hear from their media department whether that works out. So all very exciting stuff. But the date and the time is set. And I'm sure it will be really good. And all these shows you can look back, and they're on Facebook, on the Restart Sailing page, they're on the Coach Yourself to Win page, and they're there on YouTube. So you can actually, if any of them are of particular interest, embed them in your club website.